All right, welcome back to part 2. Today, or in this video, we're going to talk about laying out our servo position and also determining where our straw linear slides are going to be placed. So first thing we need to do is we need to determine what kind of model we are building, right? So if you are working on a subduction model, we're going to see how our pieces pull apart to allow the magma to come up from the bottom and fill in the space, right? So in this instance, we are sliding one of our panels this direction. That is very similar to our convergent model. Except in our convergent model, it's also sliding sideways, but it's just sliding in, right? So we start off with it being flat, and then as the tectonic plates would move and smash into one another, they produce this mountain range, right? So it starts off flat, and then slowly it grows, okay? So both of those, my straws are going in this direction. Now, we also have our transform model where we are having side slipping, like earthquakes in California, right? Where the model moves forwards and backwards in this direction instead. Right, and you can actually see kind of my straws poking out underneath there. These straws run this direction. So we need to consider, again, what is the motion that we are going to use? And in all of these, you'll notice that my servo is placed towards the end of the run. So here, why don't I take a couple of these apart really quick and I'll show you what they look like without the top. All right, so here we can see underneath of the plates, we have the subduction model, which again, that plate is going to slide outward. And then we have our transform model or our side slipping. All right, that's going to happen here. So again, the position of our straws will ultimately matter for how we put these things together. How you set your straws up exactly, you're going to work on later on, but I do want to help you lay them out. So let's do a subduction model, okay, for this example. But we can use these same principles for anything. First of all, we're going to split this work surface up in half. So this should be about 8 inches long. Mine is exactly 8 inches long. So I'm going to draw a mark at 4 inches and a second mark at 4 inches down here, right? I'm lining my 0 up at my seam. And I am going to draw this line here, okay? So this part in mine is going to be stationary. This part over here is going to move. Now again, my subduction model, the moving part is going to slide this direction. Okay, it's going to slide out. So I need my straws to slide this direction out as well. They need to face the direction of movement. All right. So the first thing that I want to do is just lay out a line of where these things are going to go. And we're not just going to draw a line because we need these to be straight. So we're going to come in a certain distance from the edges. Okay. In my instance, it's half of an inch. If you want to do a whole inch, that's fine too. But you want to come in the same distance. We're going to make marks at either side of our moving piece. Okay, so I have a mark here, 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 and here. You wouldn't have to circle them, but they're my marks. And now I'm simply just going to connect the dots, and I'm going to draw a line across. Here and here. So again, in my instance, this line is half an inch from this seam. This line is 1/2 inch from this seam. And like pretty importantly, these lines are parallel with one another. In my instance, there's 4.5 inches there and 4.5 inches here. Okay, so they're parallel. So as they move, they're not going to bind up. Now, if your lines aren't perfectly parallel, that's going to be okay. There's going to be enough movement in our straws. But like they do need to be as close as you can make them. Okay, so spend some time putting that together. Okay, next thing we need to consider is where does the servo go? Okay, so here's the servo. Okay. Notice that the output shaft, this white part here, this is what's called, let's talk about servos a little bit more. This is what's called a standard servo. It can move 180 degrees and back again, and we can control exactly what position it is in. We really want our servo to line up more or less in the middle of like where we want our panel to be in like the movement, okay? I don't want it necessarily in the middle here. I want it to be like away on the side where it's going to be moving towards, so it always stays covered up. But I want the output shaft, like I don't want it way down here in the corner. I don't want it way up here in the corner. I want it more or less in the middle. So again, I'm just going to find my general center, which this whole thing is 5.5 inches. So I come out to like 2.5 or 2 3/4 rather, 2 3/4, and I make a mark. Now, if you can't like figure that out exactly, it doesn't really matter. Just find the part that is approximately the center. And then I'm going to lay my servo out so that the white part is more or less on top of that line. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but more or less on top of that line. And then I'm going to use my pencil and I'm going to trace out the bottom. Okay, so this is going to get cut out. That's where my servo belongs. This is the center line. This is where my straws are going to go. This is where my stationary piece is, right? So we're like laying all this stuff out. So at this point, we're going to pull out a knife. Okay, knives should have covers on them when we're not using them. They are sharp. They are not toys. You should only be cutting on top of my mats. So we're going to take out a knife. We are going to lightly score our servo position. If you want to use a ruler, you can. Hold on to the ruler by the raised up point. That helps keep your hands safe from the knife. Okay, so I can cut a couple there. Okay, and again, a light pressure and maybe like 2 or 3 passes is going to be better than hard pressure right from the get-go. I'm going to pop this out. And then my servo is ultimately going to fit up from the bottom of the box and go right there. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to talk about creating our linear actuators and getting like a couple of those attached.